All right. Hello, good evening, everyone. If you cannot hear me, please send a message into the chat. If you can, then I will just go on assuming that everyone can hear me. So without further ado, we'll begin. I'm sorry for the delay. I just had to get my headphones because my laptop microphone was not working. So thank you all for joining us this evening. We were just waiting for a few more participants to join us before getting started. So we are now ready to start. I hope you've all been well. It's been a while since our last webinar, and we're very much looking forward to this webinar where we're going to be talking a lot about, Pride Month coming up June next month, and we'll be talking about the sex ed specifically in Ontario, but also it'll apply to Canada in general and what it means to have your child opted out. We'll also touch on the trustee election, which is coming up this October. And our talk or presentation, if you will, today will be presented by Amelia Ellis, who is PAVE's operations director. And she is a panelist as well, so you can see her and she'll be sharing her screen with the presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'll share my screen. Okay. Can everyone see my screen okay? Celine, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, so I'm hoping that that's
right
for everybody.
Okay, so tonight we wanted to talk about a very hot topic. What's going on? Is this bar blocking anyone's view, or is that only on my?
I can see the text completely, so I don't.
Okay, perfect.
Blocking anything.
Okay. We wanted to talk about a very hot topic that, especially approaching June being Pride Month, specifically for people with kids in the school system, what is your child actually being exposed to? I know there's a lot of, everyone kind of knows that we have quite a radical sex ed agenda from Kathleen Wynne, and then Doug Ford has really kept pushing that even further. But what exactly that means, there's some people are a little foggy on, some people aren't totally sure. It sounds big and scary, but like in reality, day to day, what does that look like for your child in a Ontario school? And if you're in other provinces, I mean, the radical sex ed with Doug Ford and Kathleen Wynne is Ontario, but British Columbia has their SOGI 123. And to our knowledge, sex ed is pretty well integrated into most school curriculums across Canada. So it's not just a provincial issue, it is like a widespread issue across Canada. So tonight we're going to discuss, as I mentioned, Ontario's sex ed curriculum, content related to gender and sexuality that your child may be exposed to in school, and how they disguise those topics under the guise of inclusivity. The famous, if you're in Ontario, opt-out policy. There's one other province that does that very well, and BC and Ontario especially are examples of how it is not done well. So we'll discuss that. We'll discuss what kinds of things your kids could be exposed to in even extracurricular activities through the school. And lastly, we just want to remind parents to stay informed and be aware of what things are out there. So, as I mentioned before, obviously we all know Kathleen Wynne's sex ed is still very much present, if not more so now under Doug Ford. He promised, if we remember, to scrap it. That was one of the things he ran on. And then he just completely went back on that promise. So a few details though it's not just in the health class that most people just assume that it is. It's anywhere because teachers kind of have carte blanche to teach whatever in the classroom as long as it loosely falls under a specific category. Examples of this I have in the next few slides, but essentially the takeaway is that it's not just in health class when you're told you can opt your child out of the sex ed day at their school. It can be in English, it can be in math, it can be hidden throughout your child's entire curriculum and day at school, and you as a parent don't know when that's going to be introduced. So for example, I don't know if any of you remember, we sent an email up on this a little while ago, but there was a BC kindergarten teacher who introduced drag queen story time to her kindergarten class without any parents knowing this, in lieu of teaching the ABCs. So there's a prime example of you think your 4-year-old is going to school to learn the ABCs, and suddenly there's a man in a dress reading her a story. Another example, many Ontario schools have the book, the cover you can see here, called Pride Puppy, and it is geared specifically to children ages 2 to 5. So this book, and I know for a fact that this book is in many schools across Ontario. And again, know what's in your child's library. Ask your child what kind of books they're learning, what kind of books they're reading. I've heard from many parents who have had their child bring this book home, not knowing what it was about, but a teacher or somebody with authority at the school has allowed the child to borrow this book to bring home and read on their own time. Oh, the opt-out program. Long story short, we don't really have an opt-out program in Ontario. As I said before, because the gender ideology can be hidden throughout any subject, all of the curriculum, there is no way to opt your kid out. Like you can opt them out of the specific sex ed class that they tell you about, but you can't opt them out of all of the things because truthfully, if it's up to each teacher, the schools don't even really know what things will be introduced and when. So because of that, there's also a lot of issues with extracurricular activities, especially leading up to Pride Month, having LGBTQ centered activities around pride topics, et cetera, et cetera. And in the school libraries, there are a lot of books that cater to very mature sexual topics, and they're geared to, I mean, as we saw in the Pride Puppy on the previous slide, very young children, right up through to high school. And those won't be on an opt-out form. You're not opting your child out of browsing the library in their school. You would hope that would be a safe place where they wouldn't be exposed to things. But unfortunately, in Canada, that's not the case. So it feels probably a little like, what the heck can I do? The biggest thing is to talk with your child, get to know what they're learning in school, what are the extracurricular activities. Even if your child isn't participating, what activities are going on at the school? If your child's not participating in a Pride Month activity, for example, they may still be exposed to it just by being at the school while that event is going on. So ask questions, get to know your child's teachers and principals, just be very involved in your child's activity and education at their school. You can discuss with your child what kind of books they read in class, what kind of books are on their shelves in their classroom or at their library. Because these are all ways to get insight into what is your child doing from Monday to Friday when you send them to school, hoping that they're being taught and educated. The other thing you can do is look at, as I mentioned before, the activity schedule, especially with June coming up. There may be many events that are catered, whether it's a pride flag being raised at the school. And a quick note about this specific issue doesn't just pertain to elementary and high schools. There have been many instances in daycares, even specifically in Ontario, that we have heard about, where the daycare children have done pride related activities, have gone to pride flag raisings at in the town of this daycare or at the daycare itself. So it's not just an elementary age student thing. There are issues in many different areas. So just be aware of who, like what your child is exposed to. And then if you have, like, for sure utilize what little opt-out program we have, because at least you can opt them out of that specific day, but that doesn't really have any effect on the rest of the school year. I will say Alberta, going back to the opt-out program, Alberta has implemented an opt-in program, which if there's going to be sex ed in a school, this seems like a much better solution. Essentially, your child is automatically opted out of any kind of sexual education unless you, the parent, deliberately opt them into that. So that takes away a lot of the unknown, because I think there's a lot of parents out there who don't necessarily even realize that their child is opted into sexual education or gender ideology or the whole list of issues and agendas being pushed in our schools. So in Alberta, I think that would be a beneficial thing for Ontario to adopt as well, an opt-in program. But ideally, there would be no gender ideology in schools. As once again, Alberta, their Bill 25, which removes that from the classrooms, that would also be ideal for the rest of the provinces to follow suit. So in addition to the previous slide that I was talking about, if there are issues, like if you've noticed or you know for a fact that your child has been exposed to things that you have not given consent to and you are not happy about, get involved with your school board. Every school board has local trustees, and your area, you can find them very easily on your school board website, which trustee serves your area. Contact them, tell them what happened. If that doesn't get you anywhere, or even if it does, you can also delegate at school board meetings, which means you can go and talk to the board, bring your problem to them, and hopefully they will hear you. But school board meetings are public events. You can go, especially as a parent, as a taxpayer. The school boards work for you. Their job is to educate your child. And if you have an issue with something that your child has been exposed to under their jurisdiction, you can bring that to them. So those are ways to get involved. If you have specific instances where you aren't really sure where to go or how to proceed, you can always email PAIF as well at info@paif.ca. And we can discuss with you what the next steps should be as well. So that concludes my presentation for tonight. I don't know, Celine, if you have any other comments to add?
I do not, but I thought it would be good to maybe take some questions. We did have, a shorter webinar planned for tonight, about half an hour to 45 minutes, but we do want to take questions. So if anyone would like to ask questions, they can send it in the Q&A box. And then we will get to as many as we can, because I know with Pride Month coming up and with all the things that Amelia discussed, there might be parents who are concerned and, just want some more guidance. So we're happy to help. And remember to be sure to reach out to us through email with anything that you're seeing your child learn in school that's alarming or new, or even if it's the usual same thing you saw the year before. But those things are helpful to us because we're not in the classrooms ourselves, your children are, And so if you're seeing something, especially during Pride Month, but throughout the year, library books, a teacher giving a certain presentation, Pride flag, whatever you'd like to share with us, is honestly very helpful, because then we're able to keep awareness among parents and our supporter base, and then also just build public pressure when people don't know. There's not a lot of public pressure on the government to change anything. So when people are aware of what's going on in schools, then we can start petitions and things like that. So we would love to hear from you and send things out in emails. Another good resource is Juno News. Melanie Bennett is a wonderful journalist who writes a lot about what's going on in the school system. So I'll just wait a couple moments, and if there's no questions, then we can conclude, but I think I see one. Okay. What should I do if my trustee is a big supporter of raising the pride flag in June? Well, what you can do is, reach out to them, be honest with them, tell them, I don't support this, and maybe get together with other parents who are in agreement with you. And that way they can, know that the constituents they're elected to represent don't support what he or she is doing. Although, of course, they were elected and potentially it was known by the people who elected them that that's what they believe in. But it's good for them to know that, there are still people out there who, are against the LGBTQ and gender ideology in schools, who don't want the radical Kathleen Wynne said, because oftentimes politicians and teachers, trustees, they can think that this is just what the people want. So it's important that we let them know, even if they're not going to do it and change anything, I'm not okay with this. And secondly, check what other trustees there are in your board. Most boards will have like 1 to 2 trustees who are, you'd have to see who the trustees are in your board. I don't know what board you're in, but you could also reach out to us and ask. There might be a trustee in your board who is not pro Pride flag. And lastly, I'd recommend getting involved in the trustee election, which is coming up this fall. So if you are interested in running, if there's a vacant seat in your riding, if you're in your school board rather, and if you would like to receive some help from PAIF, or be connected to some people who could help run a campaign, we can certainly do that. So depending on where you are, that's definitely an option, getting involved in the election. And if you know someone who is pro-parental rights running, then you can also support their campaign. So we have another question, which is, what has been the response from the government since they promised to make changes if elected? I assume that you mean like from the Ford government when they promised to repeal the Winsex ed. Because what has been their response? So from the Ontario provincial government, I don't know if Amelia, you want to tackle this question, but I've just seen a lot of deflection from the premier, and he hasn't really answered questions directly about his failure to repeal the sex ed.
Yeah, there really hasn't been much. In regards to, I'm not sure if your question was referring maybe to his threat to take over the boards, because I know he took over a few boards. In that regard, I know there's some conflicting opinions on whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. From our point of view, he's the one perpetuating this gender ideology. It's from a provincial level at the end of the day. So him taking over school boards, his opinion, he hasn't expressed any point that he will take away gender ideology or repeal the sex ed. Nothing's been said on that front. So I assume at the very least we can expect nothing to change. But looking back at how it's progressed, it seems that every year it seems to get a little worse.
Yeah, and with Ontario's Bill 33, as Amelia mentioned, they claim, like the Minister of Education, Paul Calandra, claims that they want to get politics out of the classroom, and there's been too much politicization in schools and ideology and all these things that they claim, and they go after teachers, and of course there are obviously some issues there, but there are a lot of teachers who don't like what they have to teach, but they're afraid to speak up because they don't want to lose their jobs. And the Ford government does not defend them, does not tell them that they don't have to teach something if it goes against their conscience. They just totally ignore the issue. And threatening to take over the school boards and threatening to get rid of trustees is not a small thing, because they're parents' last line of defense. Parents need to have trustees because they are their direct line of communication to the school board. They elect them and they're there to represent us. Yes, there are good ones and yes, there are bad ones, but a corrupt board means fix the board. It doesn't mean get rid of all the school boards. And that's the route that it looks like the provincial government is taking. And that's what we're trying to fight. So they're claiming that they're going after politicization in schools, but they're the ones who, they're the reason that it's there, because Doug Ford did not repeal Kathleen Wynne's radical sex ed. And, as of now, I mean, he was elected in 2018. He hasn't done much to stop the flying of the pride flags in the schools. They've been a supporter of it. Of course, teaching things like critical race theory, and that Canada was built on genocide and all these things that are very political. The government has just either been complicit in or ignorant of that is being taught in the school. And so they're just saying that they're getting rid of politicization in the classroom. And I think that it's an excuse to take over the school boards. Another person said their local board has started this year flying the Pride Progress flag from, I don't know what that means, something day, May 17th. I think I know the one on May 17th. Anyways, until the end of June without announcement and consultation. Is this still the case anywhere else in Ontario or Canada? No, so every board and even sometimes every school will do different things. Typically, if the board agrees they're going to fly the flag and a school doesn't, then they might get into heat from the people who want the flag flown. So they will fly it. If a board has decided they're not going to fly it, then they will not. But sometimes a school might fly it earlier, but generally, I mean, by June, we expect to see them all up. Sometimes they go up even earlier, and sometimes they stay up till September. It's become like a season thing. Something maybe, I don't want to be negative, but sometimes it feels like when you go into schools, there's just pride stickers all over the school. So it's no longer just Pride Month. It's really throughout the year that your children are being indoctrinated with transgender ideology, specifically gender ideology, but especially transgender ideology. It's, people who have this agenda, they want to target the children because that's how they change the future. And it's very evident in the books and what's being taught in classrooms, like Amelia mentioned. There are countless examples of those kind of books in schools. So I can't answer the question because I don't know what every board is doing, but I can look into that board and see like why it was decided that it would be flown early, but every board will make its own decision. Sorry, I saw another question come in. I'm going to answer. PAVE is definitely making progress in many areas because, especially with these elections coming up in the fall, we're already working with a number of people who are trying to run for trustee in their board. We've been hosting these webinars every month, and we do some public speaking at certain events when we're invited. And so we're here to support the parents and share what's happening in schools. If you're not subscribed to our email list, you can do so by going onto our website. But we're really trying to work hard on the grassroots, especially when it comes to this election, because it's the first one in I think it'll be 4 years. The last one was 2022, and we did have some good trustees elected then. But of course, there are new battles to be fought now. Over the last 4 years, a lot has happened, and we want to keep the good ones. So reach out to us if you want to get involved, even if you're not going to run, but if you just want to volunteer and just find out who's running in your riding. We'll be working really hard this election to help get good trustees elected. And of course, petitions and things like that. But I think that really where we can make a difference is in the school boards, delegating at school board meetings, having good trustees who can put forward good motions, like to not fly the pride flag, for instance. We're continuing to be outspoken about what's happening in Alberta and voice our support for that. And of course, we hope that other provinces will follow suit. And you can catch our media. I mean, I go on to Counterpoint, which is the show on the News Forum hosted by the former president of PAVE, Tanya Granick-Allen, and I speak about a lot of the current events related to parental rights that happens about every 2 months. So if you're looking to stay up to date, that's a good way.
Going back to your point, just about getting involved. Last year and the year before, actually, PAFE was involved and a lot of people showed up to back us up on our delegation at the Dufferin Peel board when they voted against flying the pride flag. And that was entirely due to you guys and everyone who showed up to support the motion that the good trustee in that board presented and put forward, and the support of everyone showing up. So there are little wins out there, and it's encouraging to see what can happen when we all band together and stand up for what we know is right and believe is right.
I saw one more question come in about grandparents. The person is asking how involved grandparents are compared to the number of parents because they're no longer a parent with children in school. I would say grandparents are pretty involved. We've had a lot of grandparents come to our events, and to some degree, I think that we see almost, I don't want to say an equal amount of parents to grandparents, but a large number of grandparents, which has been, very heartwarming and surprising to me. But I really appreciate that because I think that there is a sense of apathy, I think, politically in Canada. And I think that we need the younger generation to work together with the older generation if we're going to make change. And so a lot of people who, they see their children are really busy working. Of course, we know the economy in Canada, it's not easy for young families right now. So they're supporting their children's children and they're trying to help advocate for their grandchildren and their children's parental rights. So I think that's a beautiful thing. We love to have grandparents involved. My mother actually is a grandmother and still has some children in school, but she's very involved. And we have grandparents running for trustee. So that's, it's encouraging. And I think that we need all the voices that we can get. So we appreciate you being here if you're a grandparent, and we appreciate the wisdom that you can share, because oftentimes at events we'll hear stories from grandparents, and of course it's very inspiring because they were around when the schools were not at all like they are today, and it's nice to reminisce about that time and know that we can help bring that back. So I think we can maybe end here if there are no more questions. I did not see any new ones come in. But we did want to remind everyone to stay alert and check our emails because the elections are coming up, and we'll be sending more emails about that throughout the summer. We're almost in June, so Pride Month is coming up, and then, of course, the end of the school year and summer break. So we'll be busy throughout summer preparing for the election, which will take place in October. If anyone wants to run, please reach out to us. The slideshow will be shared. We're going to record the meeting, and we will be sending it in an email to our supporters for those who RSVP'd but were unable to make it. So you can expect that in an email from us. And one more question is if the New Blue Party is on board in terms of parental rights. Amelia, if you want to answer that question. I know that I think they're generally pro-parental rights, but...
Yeah, generally speaking, I believe they are. We're not very involved with the New Blue Party. However, I think they have similar opinions on these topics.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to reach out to a member of parliament, I think there are a few members of parliament from the New Blue Party, and speak to them about these issues, that's great. And to support them in the next provincial election, that would also be great. And we are happy to support those who are defending parental rights in Ontario. So until the next election, we shall see what happens. But of course, you can always depend on us to be sending out our electoral guide for our supporters to know who to vote for. So we will, like I said, send out this recording. And if you know someone who you think would benefit from watching the presentation, feel free to share it. And we'd like to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and enjoy the later sunsets. All right, have a good night. And thank you, Amelia, for your presentation.